Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 123. I'm Steve Smith. I'm along with Cole REEVES and GINO OCTA. They both have been guests on the podcast before. Cole is a teaching pro in Bentonville, Arkansas. GINO in Toronto, Canada. And they're here in the sunshine state of Florida for junior tennis. So we're going to talk junior tennis. Obviously the Orange Bowl. Today I told someone, take a little pressure off. Think you're gonna go play the toilet bowl. But let's talk tennis. It's been great to have you guys here. All the chats we have with the players in the evening or before the day starts, briefly, and then after practices, after matches. But go ahead, Cole. Why don't you lead us off?
Yeah. First, just want to say thank you, Steve, for hosting me this week. It's been awesome meeting GINO and the crew from Canada, and the whole week coming here for the Orange Bowl for me, kind of multi-purpose trip. Wanted to come down, check out the Orange Bowl. I'd never been to that tournament. Wanted to come down and see y'all's new setup. I know you've been here for a while, but I haven't had the opportunity to come down. And never been to South Florida in general. So it was a multi-purpose trip for me, and it was really an amazing experience. Today we had a full day at Battle of Boca. It was awesome to see that. Just a lot of tennis going on down here.
One of the questions at Battle of Boca I asked today is how many languages do you think the group you had with you? You went with 8 players, the two of you, and thanks for doing that. But 8 players, and how many languages do you hear? It's perhaps arguably the best place in the United States for tennis, South Florida. You know, for years people would say Southern Cal. I mean, Texas is highly regarded. And there's, pockets of tennis here and there, but I do think because we're closer to South America, we're closer to Europe, we have clay. And for the longest time, housing has been much cheaper here than in California. But I've heard it said that there's academies are opening up here like 7-Elevens. So
right.
There's definitely
every corner.
All sorts of tennis. Go ahead, GINO.
Yeah, so, same as Cole. Thank you again for having us. Honor, it's been great. I feel like I've been here for a lot longer than I have. I spent some time here earlier this year, and again, it's the same. For me, it's a bit of a multi-purpose trip. I came down with a couple players from our club, not just for Orange Bowl, but, for Battle of Boca as well, and also just spend some time with you and your setup down here. We had a great experience here earlier in the year, so just kind of coming back and just getting a little bit of a refresher and things that we worked on earlier in the year and kind of see how they've been working on throughout the last 6-7 months.
Yeah, for our listeners, just a review with GINO. The first time I went to your tennis club, I believe it was 1986, maybe 87. I went with Dave Anderson, who's been a guest on the podcast. Richard Hernandez, one of our longtime associates, at one time a former student. He was leading the program, beautiful club. So many stories, so many years have gone by, so many players. And Cole, I think I've known you for 10 years. And we met initially.
I believe so, yeah.
Initially through just our online course, Tennis Intelligence Applied. But yeah, I want to start with a topic, point of interest. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we were thinking because we were coming down for tournaments, and around that we would have a lot of discussion on tournaments. You had a list of past champions that we were staring at whenever at the Orange Bowl. They had the 18s female winners, the 18 male winners. Long list. A lot of names recognized. Roger Federer, Francis Tiafoe on the men's side. I know.
The list, I have a copy of it right here. One of the students was nice enough to type it up. Reminds me, in the stories in a biography on Nadal where he won the national 12s, and there was going to be a party afterwards, and Uncle Tony read off the national 12 and under champions in Spain, and the participants at the party were told by Uncle Tony there's nothing to celebrate because there's, I guess, 2 names that they recognized from the 12 and under champions who made it to pro tennis. But certainly this is a list of who's won the 18s, and there's many fantastic players that had unbelievable pro careers. There's just, I could go through it. I was first at the Orange Bowl in 1974, so many years.
Where was it held before? Has it been at Valkyrie for quite some time, or what was the original site?
Flamingo Park in Miami, It's a beautiful place. It's been renovated. It was on clay, and certainly we say it was a mistake for the Americans. We weren't doing too well on clay, and we moved it to hard courts. There's a Junior Orange Bowl 12s and 14s, and then there's the 16s, 18s. In many ways, they're different tournaments. I'd have to go back and check, but for the longest time, the 12s and 14s were USTA tournaments, and the 16s and 18s were ITF tournaments. And certainly, there's more international players in the older age groups. But the list, I could just tell one story and we move on. I mean, you could go through so many people that, in one way or the other, I have some insight to their background. I remember observing Fred Stolle teaching tennis, and one of his students was Penny Bard, and her name's down here, having won the Orange Bowl 1981. So I said to Fred Stolle, I said, why do you always, when you're teaching, why do you always teach off the racket and you're always just hitting volleys? He said, I'm working on my game, mate. I still play exhibitions. I've got down here Carleen Bassett. I remember she was maybe 6 months pregnant, and she was at practice. And I remember her and Dave Anderson pounding ground strokes up the middle of the court. So the intensity, Carleen Bassett, her husband Robbie told me one time, yeah, she plays golf, she hits the ball, and she runs after it. But here's my...
Cross training.
Yeah, here's one I wrote down, is Andy Roddick. So he wins the Orange Bowl, and again, fact checker, 99% sure he won the Eddie Herr the same year. And not too far removed from that, Jeremy Wurtzman beat Andy at Kalamazoo 16s. And a guy from South Africa that I worked with, after he became 1 or 2 in South Africa, came to work with me with Ravenclaw and PJ Domdo. So they both had a win over Andy. So Andy really jumped it up. And then he jumped it obviously even further. I mean, he beat, shortly after he won the Orange Bowl, he beat Sampras in the big Miami tournament. And then maybe for 10 years, close to it, he's the best American. So Andre Agassi, here's the story. Andre Agassi went through divorce. And he actually is the one who said he started stalking Steffi Graf. You know, he was going to date Steffi Graf. He was on a mission. So Steffi was based in Boca. What an amazing opportunity to watch her practice. Kids should just go to YouTube and zone in on Steffi Graf's footwork. But anyway, Andy was the best junior, one of the best juniors, if not the best junior in Boca. He started practicing with Andre Agassi, and he started taking the occasional set. And it's that old adage, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. Thought's your most powerful tool. So out of nowhere, it's like, again, winning the Orange Bowl, but then he wins the tournament in Miami. He beats Sampras. But Sampras did say, well, I'll beat him when it counts. And, not too far after that, he pretty much gave Andy a school at one of the first meetings they had at the US Open. But that's an Andy Roddick story where you got to really believe in yourself. I always tell juniors, number one is your inner belief system. And that's one thing that's very difficult for Americans versus some of the kids in these smaller European countries, is that sense of belonging. Where, like say in Sweden years ago, I spent a lot of time there where the Swedes pretty much all live in the southern part of Sweden. And my son, both my sons, but remember my son Connor, more time in the later age groups was spending time at this town in Växjö, Sweden. Edberg's hanging out with the kids and hitting balls, and just to have that type of exposure. I don't think many American kids actually, get to practice with the pros, get to, play with the pros. But so many things in the Orange Bowl. There's so many. I mean, Hugo Gaston, he was 11 years old, and I went for 10 weeks going to ITF, Tennis Europe 14s. And I know we're going to talk about the anxiety as we go on here, is that I was telling these boys that are 3 years older, I said, this kid's really good. And he played the same way he plays now, looping the ball, hitting drop shots. But he just had the it thing where he was just so relaxed. But there's just story after story. There's so many of these Orange Bowl players. Amazing.
You mentioned that Andy won the Her before he won the Orange Bowl. They call it the Sunshine Double. Is that right?
Yeah, Sunshine Double. But years ago, there was a tournament with the name's the Sunshine Cup, and they dropped that. It used to be the Continental Cup for girls, Sunshine Cup for boys. So many good things have gone away. I, cry all the time is that we're not working as hard as we used to. These no ad matches and 10-point tiebreakers, but it was equivalent to Davis Cup. And, each country would have the top 3 players. Actually, in 1989, Canada won it. And, so, Canada having these top 10 players, you think of people like people that Shapovalov. But, yeah, Robert Janacek. Just think back about the people that were on that team. That was like a big deal for Tennis Canada win the Sunshine Cup. Nestor was on that team.
Yeah.
When you were telling the story about Rafa earlier and Uncle Tony reading the list off, the word that was coming to my mind was perspective. And I think that's the thing down here is a lot of people, they're looking to get down to the Orange Bowl, and it's a big tournament. But there's the 12s, there's the 14s, there's the 16s, there's the 18s, and then there's a lot more after that. And I think a lot of times people lose perspective. And then, there's a lot of discussions, Gino, you and I have had this week, kind of revolving around, Tennis Canada, and the uniqueness of it kind of being spread out and being a little, quite a bit different than how the U.S. is. But also for me, coming from Arkansas, how different a world it is down here in South Florida and, the perspective that all that has. And Steve, I know you have a lot of perspective. You're always trying to help out with.
Well, I think the term stage, someone who's been on a podcast, Matt Clore, he'll say that quite often. The player's not really ready for this stage. To go into Frank Veltri, new windscreens. I mean, the place has been given a facelift, and it's like, wow, doesn't look like the Frank Veltri facility of old. I mean, it's a very, very nice facility, but it's just, spruced up with the international flags and the Orange Bowl. But yeah, no kids need to be taught perspective. It's a human element. The ball's not nervous, the racket's not nervous. There's so many constants, but it's a human element. And also too, it's the people that are around the players. People need to be really kept grounded, and they need to be taught perspective. The parents, I heard communicating with the coach Dave Seger, who's been on our podcast, become intoxicated. This is the Orange Bowl. This is international tennis, and they make it bigger than it is. You want to really get to the point where this is just another tournament.
Right.
The philosophy that every day is a tournament, and kids play tricks on their own brain. In practice they'll play flat, and it's like, no, I need to perform. You want to get to the point where pressure. I like to think there's just one type of pressure, self-inflicted. And when it comes down to it, the pressure, I got to make my bed. I got to do my homework. I got to do this. I got to do that. But you get to the point where you can be relaxed. It's not like you're, panicking. This is, you got to get the serve in the box, and you can not eliminate it. It's actually good to be nervous to a certain point, but not to the point where you don't have any control.
It was interesting today going to the Battle of Boca, and you've mentioned it to me over and over, and I've heard about it, but being down here and being there, and like you're saying, there's so many international people that are playing in that on a weekly basis, and it put a lot of perspective for me, great exposure seeing that, and I was trying to connect the dots between the Orange Bowl and that, seeing them so closely together. And it was just kind of hitting me. They're having an Orange Bowl every single weekend like that, and the people that are going through that, being able to go through that scenario over and over, and playing people from around the world, and the level is very high. As far as what I can see, I'm sure it changes, depending on the season, depending on what's going on, what other tournaments are going on in the area. But it's such an amazing thing. It's not for everyone, but the level of tennis is being played there, and then there's other events that are connected with it. They were also talking about the UTR. I think it's the PTT series that was going on with it, but yeah. It's pretty amazing what South Florida has on a weekly basis with those things.
I mean, I think that ties down to our multi-purpose trip here is we came down for Orange Bowl, but it was also to get exposed to, a bit of the Battle of Boca. But, just going back to the Orange Bowl, it's you know, we were talking about it the other day. It's like the names that, you know, I just look at, you know, I've been to this tournament many times, and I've seen kind of the paths of, you know, juniors from under 12, under 14 to now. And it's like I was saying, like, guys that and girls that were winning this under 12, under 14, you know, I don't see as many of them in 16s and 18s. It's always, you know, I always find historically, like, the girls and boys that win the 16s are, you know, boys and girls that are kind of staying under the radar for a while. And, you know, they go into these tournaments, you know, as wild cards or unseeded players. But, you know, you can see how their game is, like, you know, doesn't really suit where they are standing on that list. But I think that ties down to, like, you know, guys that really spend time building their game at a young age. And, you know, they don't necessarily have a lot of early success. But, you know, you start to see under 16, they start to grow into their bodies a little bit more. And then, which is interesting with the Battle of Boca, because, you know, you get so many different types of players. There's, you know, today we saw some, like, really young kids, maybe like 12, 13, playing against grown adults. And it's like, it's always fun to go because, you know, you can kind of see everybody's there working on their games. And I think Jason, the guy that runs the Battle of Oak, he does such a good job of just getting guys matches. And, you know, out of all the tournaments I've been to, he's probably one of the most well-organized tournament directors.
He's done a good job.
He's done a good job, and I think, you know, he just wants guys to get matches all the time, and I think he does such a good job of that. And it's great for, you know, anyone that's working on their game to have that kind of tournament to just go in and just play free and, you know, have different players to play with.
It reminds me a little bit of the 70s where so much tennis is being played. And certainly some of the matches are lopsided, but that's not all bad. It's not all bad. I do wish it was like 1 week on hard court, 1 week on clay.
Yeah.
You could always say, well, you know, I do wish they played best of 3 sets and regular scoring, but
More doubles.
definitely the entry fee. But that just even without the entry fee being so high is, you know, we had, you know, Ty Tucker on a couple weeks ago, and, you know, he said that you could just see the kids in doubles. It's kind of an afterthought.
Yeah.
They're taking it too lightly. The parents are taking it too lightly, and it's just the opposite in singles.
Well, they kind of had it today. You know, I was asking when we were leaving if they were having doubles, and they said they were running later in the day, and it was a long day. So I think that maybe the way they had it set up and sign up, you know, be neat to flip the script and just have it all weekend. You know, I really appreciate they have the prize money. And, you know, Siva mentioned on the first podcast that I was on about my racing background. And today I was telling some of the kids how it was the first time in a long time, or first time ever in a tennis tournament, that it felt like a race environment that I grew up in. Just the way people were hanging out, it felt a little different, but it also felt, I don't know, the word to describe it, just didn't feel exactly like a tennis tournament, but in a good way. Really good way. I thought there was a good energy, a good vibe to it, and they do a lot of really good things. I mean, little stuff, you know, warm-up music going on for the kids, and, you know, they're there at 8 a.m. And
yeah, I've been around it for a year now, and there are times where there's more college teams participating. Of course, now, this week, you know, we're getting so close to the holiday season that the draws were very large.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, the one thing about it is that you put yourself down here to train, and it's not like you're already here, so it's not like you're getting on an airplane, renting a car, checking into a hotel
Right.
if you're already here. With that, but I think also we go as a group. You know, and I think that many times if it could be done, it would be best if the coaches could take the players. Just think of other sports. I mean, the basketball team, the coach doesn't say, okay, we trained all week and you go to the game on your own. And you know, there's been situations where we've had a player who multiple times where, you know, they got schooled in, you know, maybe less than an hour, and we sat around and talked about the match for over an hour. Just get on one of the picnic tables, and, you know, we're here for the day. And also, too, is when players lose, to have them go watch the player they lost to. Willie Van Horn used to say, you know, watch your daddy play. And
that was kind of a theme today with the kids. They were having fun watching. They were doing a good job, actually, of bouncing from match. One match ended, boom, they're moving over to the next match. That match ends, they move over to the next one. They were taking it in. They were looking back at Gino and I and asking questions, good questions, and trying to analyze. And when one of the players would come off and have a discussion after the match, a couple of them would sit around and listen to what we were saying, and felt like they were maybe trying to apply that information when they went out themselves. And it was a really positive environment from that perspective.
Yeah, they did a good job today. I thought I was actually surprised. You know, they were all really engaged in everyone's matches, and you know, maybe they stayed for a bit, but you know, they could see some reflective thought, and you know, they were even coaching each other a little bit after the matches.
Yeah.
Even during sometimes, which is kind of funny, and I think that's like so important. You know, that's where like the team aspect, where it's like everyone's kind of looking out for each other.
Yeah, to have one player there who's injured and charting matches and taking notes. You know, time poverty, you know, 24 hours in a day, we just need to be able to find more time, make more time. But I do find the juniors, you know, will ask permission, ask their opponent, maybe okay if we film this match.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's really sad sometimes is we have the film, we have the charts, and you know they're proactive during the weekend when we're there and we're sitting around a picnic table. But then once on their, you know, granted not their homework, they have to do number one, that's get their academic work done. But I complain about the phone all the time. Is that unless we're leading that, it's like it's just done. You know,
Right.
The notes go away and there's just no more talk.
Yep.
Anyway, with these sheets, there's so much of the history. It's one thing though is that the junior players, for us to put it in perspective, you know, if you just ask someone like, say, you know, Agassi, seems like it was yesterday where he was playing to me, but it's baffling to think that some young players, you heard of Agassi? And they kind of look at you, and but really you know, I got Mike Belkin, 1962. I remember watching him play, actually 1961. My glasses here, but Canadian who won the Orange Bowl. You know, remember him playing with his Stan Smith Wilson racket and his two-handed backhand. But go ahead. What else you got? Move along.
No, I mean, that was actually a good point with the videoing. We had a discussion about that today with some of the kids. You know, we were having a post-match discussion, and so, you know, they're listening, they're taking the information in, but hey, really what you need to do is you need to have your GoPro. You have a GoPro, you have a GoPro. Do you have the stick? And no, I don't have the stick. You need to have the stick. You need to be bringing your camera. You need to be putting it up. You need to film as much as you possibly can, because not everybody's going to let you film. We run into that all the time where, you know, a third of the people will say no. You know, some situations, once they kind of get to know that you're filming a lot of times people will come up to us before we even ask, you're not filming the match. But we try to get as much as we can with our players, and then they take it home and it's, hey, at least one set from the weekend. You can pick your favorite set. You can pick your least favorite set.
Help me with a technical term. With a computer, on a dinosaur, the players need to have their own so they can.
USB.
Go ahead.
Like a USB. Is that what he's talking about?
Or anyway, they just have the capability of saving everything that's been filmed.
Yeah. The GoPros, they take a little chip.
It's like a memory card.
Yeah, flash drive kind of thing. I can't remember exactly what it is. It coming to mind, but yeah, save it and then.
I think it's not the term I'm thinking about. But it costs like $60, and a kid should have their own, and it stores so much data.
Right.
Oh, like a memory bank.
Yeah.
Like a cube like this.
External hard drive.
Yeah, external hard drive.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Well, I mean, to that extent, what we have our kids doing is not to, you can have different selections, but we have them put it on YouTube. And now it's not out for everybody, it's private, so only they can view it and be able to go back and do it. But the biggest benefit of that, putting it on YouTube, is you can put it on there, you can leave it and it's saved, and you don't have to have it saved anywhere else. You don't have to have a hard drive, you don't have to have any of that, so you can film one match, upload it, leave it, it's clean, and then they can go back and watch it whenever. So they all have kind of their own accounts and their playlists, and so they're tracking, you know, their matches, or uploading their matches and be able to go back and look at it, but they don't have to worry about
one thing
storage.
on video though, and we don't want to mention players' names, you know, because there's a number of players that we've watched over the last 10 days or so. But a player was going to play the Battle of Boca and then come and do some film work. And the father called me up and said, well, player doesn't want to play the Battle of Boca. Player doesn't want to come and do film work right now. I'm like, oh, fine, I'm just listening. He goes, but we really want to get the film to you to analyze the match. And I usually don't answer my phone during practice, but because of all the variables with people coming and going. So currently I'm using my phone a little bit. But I said to him, I don't need the film. I was at the match. And my point with that for the listeners is trust in some of all these key words, knowledge, facts. As I watched the match, I don't really think that the player, when you worked with them for a certain amount of time, that they really need the video. I mean, it's powerful, but you say, no, you're changing the direction, you're redirecting, you're behind the baseline, and you're changing the direction of the ball. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And here are reasons why you don't want to do that. And, just to get the information from the coach. And it's like, can they take coaching, or are they just open to it? But granted, with details, are they cross-stepping? Are they not uncoiling their body? Are they staying down? Some, the technical things. But it is more powerful to show them. But at the same time, a lot of times you don't need the film.
Yeah. As coaches, we don't need the film. I feel like I've done it, and just like sometimes we gather coaching, it's like you sound like a parrot saying the same stuff over and over, or you just would rather hit my head against a wall than saying the same thing I said over and over. It's like, okay, just go chart your match, and how many forehands did you miss wide, or how many forehands did you miss? Okay, I had 30 unforced errors on my forehand side, which is pretty common to see when you're looking at 12 and 14 under matches, or depending on the level of tennis you're looking at. Okay, how many of those do you miss wide, long in the net? Okay, and then easy fixes, and then you can come up with a couple of drills, boom, boom, put them on this, put them on that. You're missing the net. Okay, hop on the backboard. It's going to help you work on lifting. Let the ball bounce twice. You're going to have to use your legs, whatever it might be. But they finally started understanding a little bit more. And then, nowadays, too, the beautiful thing, just like with the GreatBase and how you guys are being able to expose people in such far distance. A kid here from Hawaii that's learning the GreatBase on his own before coming to you and being able to spend time and hearing all the stories. Minnesota, player that's following the content. We're hearing more and more of those stories that are coming out that are beautiful and extremely cool to hear. With the GoPro stuff, it is. And I was talking to Warren Pretorius at the tournament. Tennis Analytics. I've actually had a couple of run-ins with him, and I went up and apologized. But there's a couple of times we were at big tournaments, and we had our kids filming. We didn't know, but he came up, and the camera was not supposed to be out. So I went up and started having a conversation. Hey, I know Steve, and I heard you on the podcast. Appreciate it. So we had a beautiful conversation about what he's doing, and he was saying, yeah, you could take a GoPro and you can send us, and we can give you the data. Now I think at times it could be excessive, and people don't even know what to do with the data. But at least it's a beautiful world right now as far as the technology is out there, and if people can start learning how to put it together. And we've talked about this in the past. It's not something everybody on that might be subscribing wants to hear, but eliminating the pro, making it to where people can be more self-sufficient, and the information as far as working with your child's out there. Also, if you just get a camera and you film matches, you could find a coach around the country that's competent and capable of helping you, and could send them the match. You could send it to Tennis Analytics, and they, for a small fee, can give you the data, and you can look at that. And it's not subjective as far as I watch the match and this is what I think, or it's a lot more defined exactly what you need to work on.
Yeah, Warren Pretorius, smart guy. Go back and listen to the podcast we had with Warren. The term tagging, I guess I should always say this first with me for Tennis Analytics, is that one thing that's not covered with Tennis Analytics is the math for the grip or grips, swings, body positions. Yeah, so that's very, very important. Like, what is the name of the gadget of the Israeli software? It's on all the courts at the USTA.
PlaySight.
Yeah, so PlaySight is so sophisticated, but it's not going to tell you
Right.
the grip in terms of the angle of the racket face, angle of the racket face in terms of the angle of the racket path.
Well, Warren mentioned that, back on the podcast, the information and the analytics are so, technique and tactics, and the information is so greatly interlinked. It's all together, So, yeah, if somebody's missing a forehand, wide, long, or whatever, and we had a lot of discussions on scouting this weekend. If we get a player that's in grips on 5, okay, you start guessing they're going to be dumping a lot of balls in the net, or body's going to be opening up, grip swing, body's not going to match up. So there's your scouting report real quick.
One thing from Warren for the term tagging, and this comes back to Bill Jacobson. Typically in a match, Bill Jacobson, kind of the godfather of electronic charting. He's one of the pillars of the GreatBase. And we dedicated either one or two podcasts to Bill. 100 points typically in 2 sets, 50 points a set, 5 patterns. And say, for example, somebody misses 24 hands, and the tagging is just show them this forehand, this forehand, this forehand, this forehand. And it's not really that sophisticated. The kids we have at the place, we can teach the chart. If you just diagram a tennis court and the cluster chart, like a candy bar, a cluster of peanuts, and it's backhand ground stroke, backhand ground stroke, backhand ground stroke, and they're missing them all from the backhand corner, and you just draw a line.
Yep.
So you put BHG and you draw a line to where they missed, and they're missing wide because the racket face is open. But do they know they're missing wide? But with so tagging, you show the mistake.
Yep.
I've been told, I've heard Warren say this, is that the kids today, very visual. They don't want just to look at all these numbers if they could actually see it.
He was showing me that they have an update on their software. Before it was, it's pretty detailed, and you had to go in, you had to know what you're searching for. But now they have it to where, there's a winners, unforced errors type thing. You can click on your unforced errors. Okay, it's going to give you a breakdown of that forehand, backhand, unforced errors. You can click that, and then boom, boom, boom. It'll actually right there show you what you need, and you can quickly look through all that.
But for the player that I was talking about, where I don't need the film, and the player doesn't need the film, just need to sit down and go, and then have the player tell you, is you're behind the baseline, and because you're behind the baseline, the ball's out of the pocket, the ball's bounced too high. It's because of that you're gonna have a shorter hitting zone. Court's 4.5 feet longer, going cross court, and it's down the line. You're off by 1 degree, you miss wide. More recovery steps if you go down the line. You're making your opponent run, but they can make you run more. And the player, you've been taught to be a vertical player, and you're making a horizontal play.
Yeah.
You're creating a baseline play, but I think the point is that, and if you've worked with that player a long period of time, you ask for the feedback, and it's the responsibility of the player. The player needs to know. It's not the coach being super knowledgeable. It's the coach transferring that.
Right.
And then do they know? And, I do think too that, we coach a lot of kids. I think Munaf Patel, his daughter, Sophia, she got a scholarship on the UNC team, which is a pretty high standard of play. And he spent so much time. I remember went to Europe with me one summer, and he goes, it's always so upsetting to me. You ask these kids all these questions, and they can answer the questions, but it doesn't translate on the court. And that's just really the IQ versus EQ. They have the intellectual quotient to sit in the chair and answer, but once they pick the racket up, Welby Van Horn, they reduce their IQ in half, and it's the emotional quotient, and they're just making the same mistakes over and over again.
That's some of the words you were pulling out earlier when we were talking about commitment, right? Commitment, responsibility. How committed really are you to improving? We got all this information, you have all this help. It's very frustrating. I mean, that's one thing that I've learned as a coach is it's extremely frustrating to know that we have good information that we're trying to share, and then actually trying to communicate the information, getting people to be responsible and use the information on a daily basis is what I feel like I spend my days spinning wheels.
Yeah, well, it's like, we were here 8 months ago, and it's like, some people, like, you're still repeating the same things over, and, some of them have improved over the past few months. But there's also a little bit of regression when they start to lose sight of what they were working on. And I think that just ties down, for me, like, the last, 10 days have been, I've learned a lot about the kids that I brought down here. And, it's like now going back, and what's cool about coming here is, like, I've met you, and, we've had so many discussions about, just kind of different ways we can work on these different areas that we've kind of analyzed. Okay, like, this is what's we got to do the next few months to get better. And, like, tying in those videos, it's like, a lot of these kids don't see themselves enough. Like, they don't go through video enough, see their technical videos, but to actually see themselves play and kind of see, like, okay, this is what I'm doing that's a little off. And, just after a few days of just going through some film with some of these guys, just like points I've recorded on my phone, it's like you could see a big difference already. And this is why this we're playing this weekend, the Battle Bocas, to see if they can kind of put the 2 and 2 together. And, but yeah, just going. Sorry, I just went on a tangent there.
No, it's good. Information. We always
Steve likes tangents.
Yeah.
I plus I plus I. I think of Big Braden, I think of tangents. Is Mary Lay was the head tennis coach. He was a tangent, and actually, if people had read Vic's books and they would listen to Mary initially, because Vic would go so fast and go in so many different directions. And if people hadn't read their books and they're listening to him the first time, they just couldn't keep up. It took me a while to realize that. but information, I plus I plus I equals I. Information, ideas, and insights equal instincts. And, what happens is you work with people. And you think about myelin, the juices get going, the adrenaline, and people will produce more myelin in a tournament. They're switched on, and it's amazing how they revert back.
It's scientific, adrenaline helps memory.
Yeah.
It's connected.
But the thing is that, there's one academy I used to go to so many days and decades gone by, is they would change the words, but they had 50 words. And then periodically, rainy day, they would say, okay, we're going to switch this word. We're going to stay at 50. But the words were, you said commitment. I always think of Howard Schnellenberger, the late Howard Schnellenberger. I was in Japan teaching tennis, and Munihiro Yoshida, he liked this statement so much. They had T-shirts made. And to tell you this, the quote first, then I'll explain the T-shirt. You've heard it. Both of you heard this over and again. When you have bacon, eggs for breakfast, the chicken was involved, but the pig was committed. So they had these T-shirts made up, and on the front was a pig. And the pig was committed. In the back was a chicken with the red circle around it and a line through it. But are people committed? The parents do so much for their children. But even so, they're driving them here, driving there, and they got $100 bills falling out of their pockets.
Did you say so much or too much?
Well, we can go into too much, but no, so much. I mean, you just think they're doing so much. I mean, there is that side, too much, but I don't think we can touch upon that. But so much. But it's really the attitude of the household.
Right.
It's a lifestyle. I mean, I always tell kids, you're not living your life to win. You're not living your life to win. It's like the tournament. No, the tournament should be more like a celebration. I've practiced, but also to Jimmy Connors, I'm going to play the way I was taught to play.
Yeah.
I like the term confrontation, that red zone to red zone. I'm playing somebody who's really steady. I'm going to beat them at their own game. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to keep the ball and play. And you're playing all these players today. They don't even think about volleying. It's like, no, I'm just going to break you down. I'll beat you baseline to baseline. And then from there, it's like, okay, now I can beat you when you get short. I'll beat you that way too. But go ahead, guys. Keep going here. This is fun.
Yeah. No. That's a lot of good discussion. I mean, one of the things I was kind of laughing a while ago, we were talking about Battle Boca, and UTR is a big part of that. Obviously, sponsored by UTR. But I was laughing the other night. Steve, we were sitting down, and one of the players came in. I can't remember exactly how the discussion started, but I just heard at some point, I believe you asked the name of the player he was playing, and he said, High Nine. He said, what's your name? He said, Low Nine. And I cried for about 5 minutes after that.
Yeah, so go over that again so the listeners. I asked the player who he played, and that's one point that you should write down who you lost to. It's like Jimmy Connors. I lost that person, but I will follow them to the end of the earth to play them again. And they don't even know who they played. But tell them again about the High Nine. I asked, who did you lose to? And they said?
High Nine.
High Nine.
What are you? Low Nine.
That's like my joke where people introduce themselves to me as a high-performance coach. And I say, oh, that's great. I'm Steve. I'm a low-performance coach.
Yeah.
But no, the UTR, I think we come back to the parents too much, but the UTR is too much as well. There's a lot of positives to it. I love what you said in one of the meetings we had, is that everything they do is their UTR. Are they doing the 10 minutes of yoga? Are they doing the flexibility? Are they hydrating? Are they journaling? Are they doing all these things? And, that has to become fun. A lot of people hear that and go, well, that sounds like so much work. But, it's serious fun. It's, these kids that are having so much invested as far as time and money, their efforts as well have to be first and foremost. It's not a hit and giggle affair.
Yeah.
I think we had, I think one thing Cole said earlier, I think it was a day or two ago, but, one of the kids was, we were talking about UTR. It might have been the same night. And one of the kids goes, is UTR really accurate? And, Cole said, if you've played enough matches, it really is accurate because, it's an accurate depiction of your skill level. And, you know, you broke it down into like 4 categories where it was like your technical, if you had a UTR for your technical, UTR for your mental game, a UTR for your tactics, a UTR for your physical traits. It's like,
it's your average.
It's your average of those 4 areas. And it's like, you know, you look at that and it's like, for a player, it's like you can assess yourself and, you know, you can really see what areas need to work. And it's like, yeah, if you're, you know, if you're high technical, you know, you're a high 10, 11 in technique, but you're like a 5 mentally, you know, it's going to bring that average down. So it's like, I think for players to hear that and kind of put that a little bit more into perspective, like how can I really improve my UTR? I think that's a great way to put it. Because, you know,
improve all aspects.
Yeah, you got to improve all aspects, you know. And I think, you know, kids come to tournaments and they're like, okay, how do I improve my UTR? I guess I got to beat better players with higher UTRs. But it's like, how do you beat those players with higher UTRs? And it's kind of like, okay, what are they doing better? What I need to do better? And then it turns into more of a self-reflective improvement. And, you know, you talk about, you know, you improve your skills, you improve your fitness, and, you know, UTR will take care of itself. Winning will take care of itself.
I see it all the time. And that's what everybody's doing is they're just looking for tournaments with higher players, so they don't have to play with any pressure. They don't want to lose to someone below their level, and they're focusing on just playing tournaments with UTR. And they're not even focusing on their skills. They're not even practicing. They're not doing, you know, just like you said, Steve. They're not waking up, you know, to win the day. They're not waking up to journal. They're not waking up to get better at fitness. They don't have goals, you know, and they're just going out there and they're just playing the tournament to play the tournament. That's only going to get you so far. It's a lot of little things that add up to the big things over time.
Yeah, no, Jim Lair, it's all the little successes that make the big success. With, the day in and day out, I think we're very exciting. A player here from Quebec, he's French speaking, and it looks like he's going to go to a junior college here in the States, and I would guess he's 11.5 to 11.8, and I just think that so many kids, we've talked about another podcast, D1, is do you really love tennis? And, you know, a college semester is 16 weeks. It goes by so fast. In 2 years, you use that as a launching pad. And then to go through the history, you know, I just in this last meeting we had, I said, has anybody here ever heard of Michael Pernfors? And, of course, no one has. He was 11 in the world, Swede. And the story I understand is that the Swedish Tennis Federation dropped him. And initially, when he came over, his parents paid for him to become at Seminole Junior College. And that has changed. At one time in Florida, there was 32 men's teams. At one time, there was 0, and now we're back up to 2. But he played, and he won all 4 years. He won 2 years in the Junior College Nationals. And then he played at Georgia, and he won 2 years. And, the late Renato Figueiredo from Brazil, I was coaching him, and he lost at Pernfors. He goes, I lost to the Swedish guy who wouldn't miss. But when it comes down to blossom where you're planted, and it, you know, flipping cheeseburgers is an opportunity, and no matter where you are, you can get better. And I do think that you know, kids, you know, they kind of turn their nose up at a junior college opportunity or D3, but it's a slap in the face. I mean, if you only have, like, say, 18 more months in high school and you're a 9.5, I mean, the writing's pretty much on the wall. You're not playing at one of the Power 5 conferences. But that doesn't mean that, you know, if you love the game, that doesn't mean that, and I've had so many students who, you know, you mentioned in one of the meetings that, you know, the age of 24, the age of 25, you know, you can still find ways to play competitive tennis. Even if someone's working a full-time job, that's really a sad thing in the U.S. that these really good college players, if they don't go and play pro tennis, try to play pro tennis, they start whacking golf balls. And I do think that you need to find a way to, like they have in the club system in Europe, you know, they do pay money back at the UTRs, but if they paid more money back, if more of the money went to the players, I think that would be good.
Yeah, that makes me think a little bit. You're just talking about players going where the level that they need to be at. It's so sad to see kids that have put a lot of time and effort into tennis. And then, you know, I understand some of them maybe have not been in healthy environments and they're running away from it as soon as they can coming out of high school. But I know personally for us in our program, we want to make sure that it's a healthy love for the game, and when they're coming out of high school, they're loving tennis as much as anything, injury free, but also mentally they love what they're doing. I was really proud. We had a girl this past year that ended up going to a D3 school in my hometown. I grew up, but knew for a while that she was going to really want a school that connection with a good coach and a team was going to be important. And the more I realized, I didn't go to college myself, and so I didn't have this experience. But you can kind of figure it out. You want to go to an environment that you're going to enjoy, and you're going to either, whether you're really wanting to compete hard, you're wanting to be on a championship culture team, or you're wanting to be at a college that's just going to be a good fit. And just watching just a kid going into college and having a support group like that in a sport that they've been around their whole life, I think it's kind of priceless for a lot of parents to make sure there's fraternities and sororities and stuff like that they can get into. But I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. I think tennis is a great sorority or a great fraternity for people to get involved in. It's a lot healthier in a lot of ways. We were having a discussion about good coaches that are going to make sure they have a 8 a.m. Saturday practice instead of a 2 p.m. Saturday practice. I just think it's invaluable to make sure those kids are going into those types of schools. But we see so many people that, if I can't go play D1, I don't want any part of it. And it's so sad because they got to get a nice skill set and they could contribute to a team. And then, college tennis can be booming. I think there's a lot of positives working for college tennis right now, the adjustments that they're trying to make it better for everyone. Not everybody likes the adjustments right now, but I think they're trying to do the right things long term to make it, to have more people involved, keep more people involved long term.
Oh, that extracurricular pursuit. I had a parent tell me not too long ago. I mean, I certainly can go way back, but just recently a coach told me, or a parent told me that because their child's not cracking the lineup, and but they love it. They're still working every day. They're part of it, and it's healthy. Just the fact that just because you're not playing, and then if people were to study sport, not just tennis, the story of the late bloomer.
Yeah.
Where the sport I grew up in, there are the Sidney Crosbys who, 18 years old, he just starts in the NHL. He's going to play right away. But they use the term farm team. We're going to put them down on the farm so they can grow. We're going to put them in the minor league system. And they feel like, okay, 3-4 years and they'll be an NHLer. But they don't think, okay, at the age of 18.
Right. Makes me think of the word again, anxiety that we were discussing earlier. And then, how many times so many people are just worried about, okay, my kid's 13, 14 years old, I just want to go play D1. How much anxiety they're going to create for everybody. The line earlier, somebody mentioned in one of our meetings, was you'd rather be the late bloomer. And I agree with that whole area. You can teenage sensation, late bloomer. Vast majority of people are going to be better off to try to be the late bloomer as opposed to the teenage sensation. And everybody's anxiety level would go way down if they would be comfortable and okay with that. And I think kids are better off to be going into college, again, with a healthy body and a healthy mind, and still so much opportunity for their games to improve. Not necessarily because they haven't been listening, haven't been doing the right things. It's going to happen to a lot of people, but just because they still have so much potential left in their games and they can keep growing.
Yeah, it's about trusting it, right? I think it's really difficult. I mean, just looking from a parent's perspective and just it's hard to trust and, believe that what they're doing is right, because you really, at the end of the day, you don't really know, but you can only see from other people's examples and see how kids that have really taken time to develop and grow and were patient with it, and see how it's paid off down the road. I talk about some good players coming from unconventional pockets around the country, and we have that in Canada too. We've had some amazing kids come out of places where tennis is non-existent. But they've come out of environments where they've really made the most out of it, and they've really developed skills where it's paid off down the road. They were guys, they were not doing really well under 12, under 10, and under 14, but then they've developed and taken time to build a skill set that's made them a lot more successful in the 16s and 18s, and they've surpassed a lot of people that they were losing to consistently throughout their junior career. So
that's the talent code, Daniel Coyle. And that's what we've tried to replicate when I first read that book in 2010. I mean, that changed my life, and that's what we've been trying to create in Arkansas. Arkansas is traditionally not a great tennis state. So we got to do some unconventional things. We have to think outside the box. That was something you had mentioned earlier, being depending on where you're at, UTR, this, that. You have to be creative in your environment. Okay, as your kid, everybody wants to always play up 12s, 14s, 16s. It's like, okay, have you really wanted the 12s? Have you really wanted the 14s? And we had the discussion earlier, too, about, going really deep on that. Okay, you've wanted the 12s. Good. You need to win a few times. Can you win a little bit higher level at the 12s? But then can you go back and can you serve and volley in the 12s? Or are you serving volleying every time in doubles, first and second serve in the 12s? If you can't do it in the 12s, you're not going to be able to do it in the 18s. It's not going to get any easier in the 18s than it does in the 12s. So, and depending on the time period that you start. But, there's so many skill sets, and you got to have games within games.
Yeah.
Again, the area we're at, okay, to have a player in the, they win a tournament, okay, now let's win a few more. Let's work on eliminating unforced errors. Can you play, going back to our charting, can you play a clean match? Can you play a clean set? Can you do that consistently? Can you have one good tournament, then have another good tournament fall back? Okay, you're starting to get the information. You're doing a really good job with that. All right, let's talk about serving and volleying. Okay, or adding in green light points, whatever that might be moving forward, but just making sure you're taking your opportunities. Okay, let's add in an underspin back in. Okay, let's go back. We were actually talking about this afternoon, watching a player from Canada that needs to be more efficient with how she's playing. And, it's funny, one of the kids said he didn't have enough fingers to count all the opportunities that she had in the match. But, there was probably 60, 70 times in a match where she could have taken a ball out of the air, and the match turned into, I don't know, an hour and a half match that could have been a 40-minute match, from warm-up to end of the match.
Brad Gilbert, too many miles on the legs. Get it done as quickly as possible. Brady used to say, if you beat somebody love and love, beat them love and love. And then, years ago, and it's still done in Europe, when you play a match, you win the match, and you ask the person that you play if they'd like to, go to the clubhouse and I'll buy you a beverage, buy you a drink. Certainly back anxiety, and parents, they do so much, but when you said too much, I've said it all the time, is that you want to be the parent who's furthest from the fence. You want to be climbing the fence. And also, too, I think for the parents, you're going down the road for the first time. Have you taken a tennis player from point A to point B? Most teaching pros have not taken a player from being a beginner to being where, okay, they're, playing. And I think of an impact player as somebody who can get to the quarterfinals of a level one national. That's some perspective. But I think Jockocracy, Howard Cosell, the late famous Howard Cosell, the commentator. I think Muhammad Ali made Howard Cosell famous. Young people could go and just go to YouTube. That's one of the beautiful things about YouTube. But in this small town in upstate New York, very successful football program. And much older than me. I was just a little kid, 11, 12 years old. Player Paul Johnson. So he's good enough to play at Penn State. But that was back in the day when freshmen couldn't play. So my father takes me to watch Paul Johnson play, and I was a big Paul Johnson fan. And he wasn't playing in the backfield. That was back when they had a fullback and a halfback. But he was playing wingback, so he's pretty much a receiver. And the hotshot number to wear in high school football back then was 22. And I just said to my father, I said, because Paul Johnson was wearing number 47. I said, why isn't Paul Johnson number 22? And my father said, at Penn State, everybody's number 22. And, that's just, when you go up a level, and it's really, I don't say the number over and over again to scare people away, but less than 3% of juniors play college tennis. It's not easy to play college tennis.
It was actually something that kept popping in my mind this week. Hearing that, being at the Orange Bowl is, going back to our program, being around our parents, and how do you continue to motivate them? But it's a little theme, and it's like, be the three. And I feel like it's talking about commitment, it's a decision. The families I've been around, the people I've been around that are committed, that are willing to go 7 days a week, that, okay, you're not having drills these days. We're going to be going out. We're going to be doing practice matches. We're going to be doing a hit. The most committed families, I've been around some good ones, even though I've taught for a short period of time. I've been around some good ones that, they're traveling. They're taking a all-day road trip or going somewhere, and they're finding courts halfway. they're going 6 hours and they're going to stop and they're going to hit for an hour and a half to make sure they get it in on that day. And that for me, that teaches me lessons as far as coaching. Now, I'm not going to require all of my parents to do that. Not everybody are going to have those same goals, but that's the 3%. And if people could just acknowledge that stuff and understand that, then they have a better opportunity. I get really frustrated with those statistics. There was a commercial a while back that was something like that, and it was actually a very serious commercial about not all kids are going to go on and play high-level sports, but it was sending a bad message just as far as almost kind of a quitter's mindset. It's like, why even try? Why even try? Because only 3%. I feel like so many people read that statistic and they just give up right there. It's like, I can't be the 3%. And it's like everything else. If you're willing to do what other people aren't, it's simple as that.
Well, I think as a technician, the USTA, they still play it. During the US Open, cute girl, 6-7 years, comes out, tosses the ball high, has the palm up pizza position, and the toss goes down, hits her on the head. And isn't that so cute?
Yeah.
But actually, you have to see the other side. Well, if the player's having fun, they got to have fun just trying to get better, just being in the game. Scotty Perelman was a guest that we had. There's room, and obviously people have said this to Scotty in years gone by. There's room for you at the top. People need to hear the positives. Austin Krajicek's his father, Rob Krajicek. Someone's got to make it. Someone's got to make it. So kids do need a kick in the fanny for sure. I think the ratio, they need more kicks in the fanny than pats on the back, but they need the pats on the back. They need to be told, you can be a great player.
Right.
You can be a great player. But at the same time, this is what we're telling you have to do to be a great player. There's greatness within people just to become the best you can be. That doesn't mean that you're going to be, in the Wimbledon final, but just that, pursuing excellence.
Yeah, finding ways to pull the development plan together step by step. The other day I was mentioning something that we have done with a plan that we've given one of our players in the past of is trying to progress at a fairly high rate and say, well, I just want you to stay at the baseline and just hit the ball in the middle of the court till you can not miss. And they have a hard time doing it. And you mentioned Welby Van Horn, he was similar to that. I know you've talked about a lot in the past that he starts with, has the people just hold the racket, palm up, and then just put the ball in the court, and then it changes to the championship grip, and just kind of stage development in a way. It's like having a plan. Okay, we're going to switch you. We're definitely going to switch you around here, but we're going to let you do this first, and we're going to keep a close eye on. And as soon as you hit these checkpoints, we're going to move you on to the next thing.
But the genius of Welby, though, is that he would teach the stance. He'd have the kid put the racket in the tray position, toss, tap, but they had to hold their balance.
Yeah, body balance.
With Gino, tell us a little bit about Canada to jump above juniors, and Canada just won the Davis Cup. We always say hungry dog hunts best, and the number of immigrants that come in, their parents come into a new country, they learn a new language, a new way of life. When you talk a little bit about Felix and Dennis, and even don't want to forget Papasil.
Yeah, it's actually so funny. We were today. We ran into Casey Curtis.
Yeah.
Who coached Milos for a long time. It's so funny. You told me, I was like, when I go to Battle of Boca, I was like, can I get courts? And all the courts will be open except you'll see Casey Curtis there. He's the only one that's there early in the mornings on Saturday. And it's so funny. We ran into each other in the parking lot and we were just catching up. And I introduced Cole to him, and we were just talking about, just kind of his experience and, what he's been up to. And we were talking about, he brought in Cole asked about Milos and what he's been up to. And we talked about his kind of upbringing and what kind of family he came from.
Yeah, that was good.
And, the first thing he said was that he had great tennis parents. His parents were never involved with any of the coaching. They would drop him off, and, his dad would always just say, I'm just the driver. But Casey's the coach, and, he'll let him do the work. But I think that's where that trust comes, and, it's like, everybody that they've put into Milos's life, they've had significant trust in, and they just let them do their thing. And they trust Milos, too, to kind of, process and take. And he was always a smart kid, apparently. And but I think it's like you hear stories like that where it's like the parents have complete trust in the coaches that work with their kids, and, they don't get involved. And I think, obviously there is some sort of involvement where they're, they take them to tournaments and they see, but
But he was saying that the dad never had that discussion, strategy, wasn't doing the car ride of talking about strategy or trying to get in, interfere with this way he said zero interference.
yeah, zero, and that was the word
He kept saying zero interference. Yeah. He said his dad wouldn't say anything if other people came up asking him about Milos. Those are the coaches over there. I'm not the coach. But he said when he got in the car, he was hounding him about schoolwork.
Yeah, schoolwork and
algebra, this, or that, or whatever.
Yeah, that's where he kind of had that balance where it's like his parents, they separated tennis in a different, they let tennis be with the coaches, and then in their lives was just like all about school and, just good grades. And I think that's where, I look at all the guys that have had success in Canada, and they kind of all had similar backgrounds where, they've had coaches that have, had big impacts on their lives where they're coaches, and their parents, they've just had good understanding parents where they let the coaches do the work, and I think, it's very rare you'll get zero interference, but I think there's a point where it's like too much interference is obviously going to ruin players' development when they're too involved with that. But
yeah, Casey's same age as me, 68. He's from California, but he spent many, many years, 20 plus, anyway, I'd say 25 years in Toronto.
Yeah, I've known Casey for a long time. So it's like, the last time I saw him, I was actually at the Battle of Boca. And
he leases 3 courts. He's coaching there from Macy. Here's a story about Milos Raonic. I mean, I have many. I think of this kid, Jeremy Langer, who I spent a ton of time with. He hit the ball really well. And, I guess the story would be that he had a good run against Milos in the 14th and 16th, and all of a sudden the serve kicked in. And Richard was saying, just tabletop back that return. And
easy.
And Langer's going, Richard, some of them were just unreturnable. But anyway, I used to go back and forth to your club, Toronto, just working as a consultant clinician. But then Richard pulled the strings. My young kids were learning to skate and play hockey, and so made the arrangements where I lived in Toronto for 2 years. And that was a great period of time watching kids, like my 2 kids, learn how to skate. But there's a place called Mayfair West, so there's no connection between Milos Raonic and Andrew Schneider. Andrew Schneider is a small guy, smaller than me. He's top 50 in the world. But I was helping out this tennis club, and your tennis club, Richmond Hill, and I were telling Richard and the owner, Phil McCars, we should do some corporate outings. So we had meetings with Andrew Schneider. He shows up, and there was a picture where he's on a Canadian magazine with his racket in his hand, his fist clenched. And he had some wins over great players. He beat Becker, for example, who's number 1 in the world. So his father vacuumed tennis courts at this club, Mayfair West. And I'm sure I've told the story before on the podcast, but it's worth hearing again. So that means he's vacuuming the courts early in the morning before school. You get up, okay, 4:30, we're going to this tennis facility. I'm going to vacuum courts, and you're going to be hitting against the ball machine. No connection between Schneider, 2 immigrants, and then Raonic, his father did the same thing. He got a job vacuuming courts at Mayfair West, so his kid could hit balls in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's like, Pete Sampras, his father didn't watch him play. If you read Pete's autobiography, Pete says, I don't like the word lousy because my father would say,
right,
you're doing lousy. But at the same time, he made sure he got to his lessons with Lansdorp. And then other people, and he allowed Pete Fisher to show him the films of Laver. And so, yeah, you don't have to be the parent who's climbing the fence and you're all about the win and all about the ranking and the UTR. One shoe doesn't fit all, but I do think sometimes it gets out of line where it would be great if the player could play, the parent would parent, and the coach would coach. But there's always the other side, and in all fairness to the parents, the standard of coaching is not what it should be.
Right.
Not what it should be. So they we make these videos, and so much of the information is based on Braden. So we film a kid, and I tell the parents, there's a very good chance that you'll learn more, you and your son, your daughter, you'll learn more about technique in the next hour than you have in all the years that you've been in tennis, because they're just grip, swing, body. Like, that's not a very long hitting song.
Well, that's it. I mean, it's a good point. We had that discussion the other day. My wife, being a speech language pathologist, and they deal with Medicare, Medicaid stuff, and it's required. Parent education is required in their field. They have to make sure that they're bringing the parents in and they're explaining what they're doing with them. Now, sadly, just like us, a lot of the parents don't reinforce the things they give them. Hey, just twice a week for 15 minutes, do these exercises. All you have to do is roll your tongue or lift your mouth or whatever it might be that they're giving them. But they don't do it. And, but we were having a discussion, and I hear it all the time where, just like we say, let me be the coach, you be the parent. But the best thing really is, and I remember coming to Memphis first time. That was one of my vivid memories being around you, is coming to Memphis. We have a group of players where we're doing stuff, and then you had constant meetings, and y'all were bringing in groups of 15, 20 parents. You had a TV set up, you, Ilya, and y'all were teaching them, just like you said, grip, swing, body. Had a slow motion video. The parents were sitting there. They're having to take notes. It was beautiful, and you could see that every time you came back or every time we ran into people from Memphis that they were becoming educated on tennis, and so it makes it easier for when the kids go to play, that the parent is actually knowing what the child is trying to do on the court. They understand those basic concepts themselves, and then it's better communication inside of those programs. Just better everybody's going to be dealing with the program. So making sure that, I think that's a lot of times where it goes wrong is when one parent thinks they have an understanding of what's going on, and then they're talking to another parent who has this, and then just a lot of conflict. So the more you can get everybody on the same page, the more you can educate those, I think it's better for everyone.
Well, I always say if you can feed breadcrumb, what does your wife do again?
Right, yeah.
Breadcrumbs to a pigeon, you can feed tennis balls. And I think it's A-okay for parents to be proactive and toss balls. But, if they're not the technician, they don't need to be the technician, but they can start feeding balls. I tell parents all the time, the tiebreaker test gets to a point where you can feed the tiebreaker test. And don't be telling your kid how to hit the ball, but just, where to hit the ball. Can you hit the target? Braden,
right.
That's the definition of tennis, hitting targets. But what about, again, those Papaso, what's his first name?
Vasic, Papaso.
The story about, the parents just driving through the gate to escape communistic regime in Czechoslovakia. Then later on, he went back there in the summer because the world opened up. So he ended up having the best, where I guess he's based in Vancouver, but he spent time in Europe. But then, so that's the three of them. They're immigrants, and why don't you expound upon that a little bit? They win the Davis Cup.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, that was a great accomplishment. That's the best accomplishment we ever had in Canadian tennis, at least for a while. But yeah, I mean, you said it best, like hungry hunts best. And, it's like those guys, they come in and they just like, I look at kind of their stories growing up, and they've always been, the hardest workers, but they come from the most humble backgrounds. And, it's just, I look at their development from when they were younger and just kind of seen how they've progressed. And, they just always trusted the process from a young age, and they've always put in the work, and, they never really rushed or accelerated anything. And it comes back to anxiety. So, I think it's great that they're leading a way for Canadian tennis. But I think it's also, it's giving a lot of kids belief, but also, parents are also, now they have this goal and this expectation of what they're looking for. And I think that's where it's important to kind of see how these kids have grown up and the kind of backgrounds they have. And it comes down to their parenting, right? And we talked about it for a long time, actually. It's like, I work a lot with under 12, under 10 kids. And I think, as I've kind of coached throughout the years, most of my job is actually just educating parents. And I find like the more I educate parents, the better, it is to coach. So it's easier to coach their kids when the parents understand. We had a team event a couple weeks ago where I spent a lot of time with a group of under 10 kids. And, I've worked with these kids for a while now, but I've never really had a conversation with the parents or spoken to the parents as much as I did over the 3 days I spent with them. And it's just, they had so many questions, and I can see some parents are pretty good about it. They understand development and time, but others are a little bit more anxious about it. But just speaking and sitting down with them and just kind of, telling them like, these are the kind of things they need to do, and, they kind of see how other kids are improving, and, this is what they got to do a little bit better. I think the parents relieves a little bit of anxiety off them too. Just they have a better understanding of where their kids are, and, it's okay to be a little bit behind. There's things that they can do to get better. Because I think, they go to these tournaments and they see kids doing well, and, this kid's or so-and-so is beating this and beating everybody. But, I tell them, yeah, they have, if you look at their grips, the way they're hitting the ball right now, they're just winning because they're bigger. And it's like, we talk about winning is confusing, especially at a younger age, where it's like parents just see kids that are winning and they go, they have like what are they doing? Who are they working with? And it's like whoever they're working with has the magic sauce or, the key to it, but it's really not the case. And we talk about, there's two kids from, we talk about kids coming from different parts of Canada that aren't really tennis cities or tennis towns, but, there's two kids that came. I was telling Cole the story of these two kids, this boy and girl back home who, they come from a really small town, a small province where there's really no tennis. They don't even have indoor tennis courts, but they've been able to like have a successful tennis career or junior career, and to come from something like that shows like you don't need you continue to just work on your own and kind of build your game, even if you aren't winning at a young age. It's like you can see it down the road.
Practicing on a basketball court, you said, right? Basketball or volleyball
so
court?
They're from Regina, and I know they have, all I know is they have like 4 outdoor hard courts they play on in the summer. I think there's only 4 courts, like tennis courts in the city. There's a couple public courts, but in the wintertime where it's like basically snow there 10 months of the year, they're playing on like a basketball surface. So it's like lightning fast, and I spent some time with him last year, and he just kind of told me his background, and I think it's interesting. I was like, to be able to accomplish that kind of, or reach that kind of level with not even having a proper tennis court majority of the year is really remarkable, I think.
The term paint a picture, well, you just did a very good job with that, Gino. Saskatchewan, they have a geography test for our Americans, like, put your finger on Saskatoon. With paint a picture, so I don't like these 2 words. I would tell tennis parents, run away from these 2 words. Tennis kids, run away. Country club. So it's pretty difficult to teach tennis at a country club. If you can, your parents have an account and you go charge French fries. But so I just say Richmond Hill. I don't like to say Richmond Hill Country Club, but it's a beautiful facility. So again, to paint a picture of some of your players here, I said, well, I told you to do this the last time you were here. In your bag, do you have a foam ball? You could have a green dot ball. Great training tools. So they leave court, say 19 and 20, and it's not like here in Florida. There's indoor courts are precious. They have their 2-hour session, and I said, okay, when you leave, do you make a right-hand turn and go to those empty squash courts, and just on your own start hitting the foam ball or even a regular tennis ball? Just go in and make it productive. More reps, hitting, coming off a wooden surface. You think about like a Jimmy Connors in an armory hitting against a wall with a wooden surface, and why he had such a great return serve. But at your country club, they have great muffins. And are you going to go to the left, and you're going to go to the snack bar? But you just look a kid in the eye and say, what choice are you making? And so they come here, and it's like, okay, you got the sermon, but you went home, and how many trips did you make to the squash courts? And it's like, how many trips did you make? I mean, do you serve and volley? Have you served and volleyed once in a year? There's one poll that has tennis ranked as the 2nd worst sport for coaching. I don't like really to think about that. That's one of the things we're trying to do. We haven't really, with GreatBase, we haven't invented anything. We've just put together some homework, and the people that have gone before us, fundamentals. But yeah, paint the picture is the muffins are good. But also, too, then the kid, they got to know, okay, you go back to the podcast we had on brain typing, and, one of the boys was here, he's just totally extroverted, capital E. He needs to be around people. And it's like, no, you found out what your brain type is. You have to try to be the opposite. You know, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go to this empty squash court. I'm going to try to keep it a secret so no one else is taking my secret place to practice. Go ahead, Cole. What else you
Beautiful.
got?
No, I think we hit on all the topics that we put down. That was great. That was a great recap of the week, and yeah,
One thing I would like to say is that, again, is confrontation. It can be a healthy confrontation, but red zone to red zone. There's not many confrontations. You know, you think of the 3 zones of the court. Maybe we could each do that, just end with one thought. Red zone, yellow zone, green zone. Try to get to the green zone. Try if you're going to missing a point in any situation. You want to, I mean, you played an entire set, you didn't hit one overhead. How many volleys are you hitting? But when it comes down to it, it's red to red, yellow to red, green to red, and then you flip it on the other side. The players in the red zone, now they're in the yellow zone, then they're in the green zone. Very few times in singles, it does happen, where there's green to green. There's very seldom yellow to yellow, because if they're yellow to yellow, they don't really know the game. They're going to go forward. They're not going to stay in the yellow zone. But then break it down, what percentage of the points that you win. I think a lot of times what happens is someone says, well, you're playing someone who's really steady. Then be more consistent than them. And don't use the term pusher. You know, I just don't like that. You know, I'm playing a defensive specialist, and a defensive specialist will let you know how good you are. And that's where Braden used to say, yeah, they have a house full of trophies. And that person who's a defensive specialist, I mean, okay, well, it's Borg. Borg was a pusher. Nadal's a pusher. But respect that defense. And Braden used to say, the person who's really steady from the baseline, they're going, this is great. This could go to 100. The longer the rally, the more they like it.
Yeah.
And you have to just be patient and aggressive. You have to wait for the short ball. And you know, if you're playing somebody and you throw the ball up high and they back up, it's like, how can you lose that person? You know, and it's very much a lost art. But that would be one thing that I would want to just end is a confrontation, a healthy conversation. It's like, okay, I'm going to become better than you, red zone to red zone. I don't talk too much about Boris right now. Boris is in jail. Boris Becker. I used to play tennis like Doris Decker. But with Boris, he was going to play in the semifinals. Or he was playing in the semifinals against the cat, Machir. I believe Slovakia. Not Czech. No, he wasn't Czech. He was Slovakian. But anyway, didn't have a great serve. And Tyriak told Becker, only let the ball bounce twice. Once when you're returning, and once when the ball boy gives the ball to you. You're not going to beat this guy from the baseline. And Becker said, I'll show you. He went out and he lost to Machir in 5 sets, but he kept looking at Tyriak. And he goes, no, I'll beat him from the baseline. So, I mean, I think you have to prove yourself. It's like, I will prove that I can keep more balls and play than you. And then the tennis history, you know, McEnroe, you know, he thanks Borg. You know, he taught me defense. You know, I had to be able to be better baseline to baseline. But that's one thing I would share is that you got to love the confrontation. You know, it also has to be principle based. You know, the green zone. I'm going to go to the green zone because if I don't go to the green zone, I'll never be good in the green zone. And if the ball's short, I'm playing an approach shot. It's not good. I call the approach shot, that word's come up a couple times tonight, I call the approach shot an anxiety shot. You can just see the kid freaking out. They're just freaking out. When you hit an approach shot, basically you want to be able to hit a volley. You know,
Right. Yeah.
You don't go for the $100 shot from the 10-cent position, you know, the geometry of the court. But yeah, why don't you each share one more point? We'll sign it off here. But I'm sure our listeners are getting something out of this conversation. I hope so.
Yeah, for me, I mean, the trust, commitment, all those types of things, and then really enjoyed the discussion with talking about parents, and we talked about tournaments, talked about Orange Bowl, but mindset of the household. Another point with all that stuff we had the other day was that it's the first time through for a lot of the parents, and maybe first, second, even your third. I've been coaching for 17 years, and I've made mistakes with every single one of the players that I've gone through. So sometimes I reflect, I'm like, man, these parents get 1 chance, 2 chances, 3 chances. I would have messed it up too. So it's, finding people that you can, coaches you can trust, people, that are doing a good job with it, and making sure that, you're just kind of following along with the process that they may be setting in front of you. It's hard to do, but, it's your first time in the game. Probably don't want to try to learn on the fly.
Yeah. I think for me, it'd just be accountability. We talked about like just keeping players or holding players accountable for their tennis. We had some guys lose last week, and you said it right in the meeting, like, you deserve to lose. There's things that you're probably really not doing well leading up to that, where it resulted in that result. But I think just holding players accountable for the results, and things that they were doing in preparation for certain events, and and just keeping them honest and say, like, you didn't do these things, and it's like, if you had improved on these prior to, maybe these things haven't happened. But just holding them accountable for the day-to-day behaviors, things they do in practice. We talk about, like, how they they don't live to win, they don't live to be champions, where I think it's just, as coaches, we just have to remind them.
No, well said. We as coaches have to be accountable.
Yeah.
We have to be responsible. That was Braden's favorite line: take responsibility. And with that, I'm responsible for how they hit the ball. I'm training them on how to hit the ball, so they need to be able to hit the ball. So I think also too that the junior should realize that when they lose, the coach loses too, and the parent loses, and it's okay.
I've lost a lot.
Yeah, it's okay. But you have to be accountable for that. You're part of that win-loss record. I think with that, then it's like, okay, I'm going to be more committed. Same thing we're talking about. The players need to be hope, wish, and a prayer. You don't want to hope to be a better player, wish to be a better player. If you are praying, pray for world peace, pray for starvation, elimination of starvation. But I like to tell people that you're not going to get what you expect, you're going to get what you deserve. And, my old man used to say, if you chop wood all day, you have a pile of wood.
Yeah.
And, we have ourselves set up where there's a park in walking distance with 16 lighted backboards. And again, it sounds doom and gloom, but, fair enough. Okay, the girls, we have some girls that we're helping out. They're staying with us. 2 teenage boys, 17 years old. Okay, you guys run down there on your own. But so it is, you always have to be concerned with that. That wasn't the case years ago where I grew up. Your parents didn't even know where you were. My parents didn't even lock their house. They didn't look for the keys to their car because they were always in the car. But that makes it tougher for parents today, that they can't just, your kid just doesn't get on the bike and go. But you got to find a way to do the extra. Like the definition of work, if you're a hard worker, as soon as you get done with one thing, you think, what do I have to do next?
Right.
But also, too, is that if you're only doing what they do in the program plus, I always say there's no program that develops a player. It's what you do on your own. It's what you do on your own. The extra. To do the extraordinary, you have to do the ordinary an extraordinary amount of times. And they need to record that. They need to bank hours. They need to have a log where, what extras do they do? Just a gut check where they write it down. And I think one of the problems, again, is that they're just, the phone is like a third arm. It's just turn that thing off, and how much screen time do you have? And are you going, okay, how many extra things did I do during the week? And then energy makes energy, and you find out that people that are highly motivated, they're going to do better with their schoolwork. They'll kill less time. It just comes down to time management. All right, Cole Reeves, GINO OCTA, thanks again for taking time. It's almost midnight, giving out free content. That's our mission, is try to help tennis teachers, and I hope that people found benefit in this. I know I did. But again, guys, thanks. Appreciate it. You guys
Thanks,
can
Steve.
wave goodbye to the camera there. All right, good night. Adios, amigos. 123 in the books.
Buenas noches.
Thanks, Coach.